So welcome everyone. I'm Margaret Carney, Director and Curator of the International Museum of Dinnerware Design. I'm going to do a brief introduction of the three presenters tonight. So it's not just one person, you get what do you call it? It's not a twofer, it's a threefer, I guess. So the topic is Vadna of California. That's all I'm going to tell you about it because they're going to tell you everything else. We have a few pieces in the collection that were part of Bill Stern's collection that came to us in, I think it was 2020. And frankly, I never heard of Vadna before that. And I didn't know much about California pottery in general. And I learned a lot from Bill Stern's collection, but we'll all know more tonight in a moment. But the presenters are Scott Vermillion, who's on our board and a researcher, a major collector of mid-century modern, and also Jim Drobka, who's Scott's in Chicago. Jim Drobka's in California, major collector, researcher, knowledgeable person. And then the woman who may be large on your screen right now, which is Lynn Humfreville Zenick, is the daughter of the Vadna pottery people. And so she's going to give us all kinds of information you've never had a chance to hear before. So I am going to, without further ado, turn it over to this trio of experts and take it away, Scott, and share your screen.
So Margaret, thanks for having us. All three of us are really honored and excited to be doing this tonight. So this all started when Margaret's already mentioned she received a gift from Bill Stern, the Bill Stern estate. And Bill Stern was a noted collector of California pottery. And he had a California Pottery Museum. When he passed away, his estate donated this set of Vadna of California pottery to Margaret's museum. So I have been helpful to Margaret in doing research on a lot of the pottery that she has in the collection. And when Margaret received this gift, she asked me to do a history on Vadna of California. And, I was excited to do that until I started reading books I had on the subject. And even in Bill Stern's book, he noted that there were 800, in 1948, I believe, the height of the pottery industry in the United States. There were 800 pottery companies in California. Vadna of California was one of them, but he said very little was known about that company, and he left it at that. So I had a challenge in front of me that I knew. So I asked my friend Jim Drobka if he had ever done any research on Vadna of California. And he said he had found a obituary on Vadna Humfreville and said she was part of the pottery, but that's as far as he had ever gotten. And luckily, the Humfreville name is unusual, so it wasn't like I was searching for someone named Smith. So I went onto Facebook and I found Lynn's name and sent her a message and asked her if she was the daughter of Vadna Humfreville, and she kindly responded. And that's what started us, Jim and I, talking to Lynn. And so Lynn was born in, I believe, 1949, and she was involved with the pottery company as that her parents ran. So it was a delight talking with Lynn, and Jim and I actually had an hour and a half interview with her maybe 4 years ago. And we had talked about doing a presentation like this with the museum, International Museum of Dinnerware Design. But because of COVID and other factors, it didn't happen until now. So that's why we're excited and delighted to do this presentation tonight. So the story starts, we did get an ad from Lynn that called Vadna of California Duality in Dinnerware. And this was from a 1946 press release from Women's Wear Daily. And they noted that because of Vadna of California's two-tone color scheme and combination of materials, wood and clay, they deemed it a duality in dinnerware. And as we talked about how we were going to present this story tonight, we noted a lot of other dualities. Lynn's parents both had complementary talents. There was a move from the company from Los Angeles to Leucadia, California. The name of the company changed. They started in dinnerware and ended up making mugs and souvenir pieces. And they were important in the Leucadia community. So there were a lot of dualities in this company's history. And the story starts with Bill and Vadna Humfreville. And I'll leave it now to you, Lynn, to tell the rest of the story.
Well, the picture on the left is my mom and dad, Vadna and Bill Humfreville, when that was their wedding. They were both living in the Los Angeles area. I think my mom was actually living in Whittier at the time, and my dad in Pasadena. The middle picture is where they lived in Pasadena after they were married. They lived there till the time that they had moved to Leucadia. Leucadia, it's actually part of the city of Encinitas, which is a pretty small area. It's on the coast of California. It's, the pottery was on the 101. It's, I don't know, maybe 20 miles north of, 15 or 20 miles north of San Diego. So that house was their house in Pasadena. And then the photo on the right, that's something I think that Jim found maybe that I didn't know. My parents were both working in a bank in East Los Angeles. I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know about this article about, more about what he did what my dad did at the bank. He was not happy working at the bank. He was actually quite unhappy, and he really wanted to have his own business. He wanted to make he wanted to make a product which was aesthetically pleasing and was also functional. That was important to him, to make something that was going to be used by people on a daily basis. He started out trying to make wood products. I have a small bookcase that he made, which seems really nice, but for some reason that wasn't working, and he got interested in ceramics. They took a few classes at the community college. I would guess it was probably Pasadena City College, and read books and developed their business. On the left, that photo, that's what my mom wrote in a book. That's my mom's handwriting that she wrote in one of the ceramic books that she gave to my dad when they were developing their pottery and their glazes. So that obviously 1945, that was at the beginning of their pottery. And the other books are books that they actually used to learn about making ceramics. And this is a map of, you can see I think Jim labeled where we lived in Pasadena. That's the address. The 448 Laguna Road is the address of the house that you saw in the photo. And then where it says Vadna of California, that's where their first pottery was, where they made the dinnerware. They pretty much just made dinnerware there. And then later when they moved to Leucadia, they were still making some dinnerware for a while, but I think pretty quickly stopped that and transitioned into making mugs. And those are pictures of the pottery in Los Angeles. That's a picture of me on the left in front of the pottery. And then the picture on the right is Jim found, and that's what the pottery looked like today. You can see it's on Blake Avenue, I guess, which I remember is kind of a light industrial area. It looks like it still is.
We're thinking it might be the same building or just heavily modified, but
yeah.
So it's kind of cool that it's still there.
Yeah, there are some building permits that show it's gone under, through some changes over the years.
So part of part of the duality is this duality in materials. And Jim and Lynn will talk more about it, but I think it's actually three things: thin semi-porcelain, two-toned colors with wood accents, which was incredibly unique for its time. I don't think there's any other dinnerware that was like that. So this is a line list that we put together of all the pieces that were in the first line of dinnerware.
So my interest in Vadna started with the Bill Stern collection as well, when it was photographed and shown in his book, Mission to Modernism. And the pieces with the wood accents really caught my eye, and they really left a lasting impression because it seems so unique. And I think I've probably been collecting Vadna pieces for about 14 years now. So we have some examples of, different shapes, different color combinations, but here you get a look at a gray and yellow glaze treatment.
Which
you can
was
see
called
colors.
Sunburst.
I'm sorry?
This was called Sunburst, correct?
Yeah, the combination is called Sunburst, right? And then it's like cloud gray and the yellow. But
And your mother worked on glaze treatments and patterns, and your father did the shapes. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad was really more the one that wanted the pottery. I mean, he was the one that really had the drive for this. And I think they both worked on the shapes, probably more him, and I think him more the kind of like technical part of of, of the making of the pottery, and my mom more developing the glazes, and like you said, and the uh, the colors and the design patterns that we see later on. I also just wanted to mention, I think that I've assumed that the wood handles and bases or maybe kind of a transition from my dad, wanting to make woodworking products, because it came, right after that period. So I'm thinking, since he was already kind of working in wood, he combined that with his with their ceramics.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a great transition, a big leap from working at the bank and other kinds of jobs like that to something very artistic, very elegant, taking some classes, having the books. I mean, that book is inscribed, Christmas of 45, and I think the dinnerware was out by 46.
Right.
So it's all happening like pretty fast, it seems.
And I love this piece. I mean, I can't think of anything else like this piece that I've seen from anyone else. It's totally unique.
Yeah, this is, it comes as a 3-compartment like relish, which is in the lower right. Um, and they're not held together on a wood base or some kind of lazy Susan. I mean, you could just put them together, or you can choose not to. I have 2 sets, so you can combine it as the 2 halves, like in the upper right, and then like the 4 quarters all together. So it's really flexible depending on what you have, and it is pretty unique. So here on the left, you can see some of the wood touches. So there's the handles on the creamer and the sugar, the base on that tall tumbler, handle on a coffee cup, and the bases on the shaker set. And the 2 pitchers are the same, but it's sort of like with the lid, it becomes like a coffee pot rather than a pitcher. And then the holes on the shakers are a nice design as well.
And these are promotional photos that Lynn had that were taken when the dinnerware was first designed.
Yeah, and I would say this one, this photo has a bunch of stuff going on. So on the far left, you have the creamer and sugar and the shakers with the wood handles. There's another design for the coffee pot. And then there's a different design for creamer and sugar. And then in the middle, under the great Vadna sign, is yet another design for the salt and pepper. And on the far right, both of those bowls have the wood base. You see a lot, and there's the alternate coffee cup here in the front too. So there's a lot,
What's interesting is they're showing both shaker sets in this photo.
and both cream and sugars.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's a close-up of the creamer and sugar and the salt and pepper shakers. And we all love that. We all love that tray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, this is showing some of the different color combinations, showing the cups upside down, and you can see the outside and the inside at the same time, and the combinations that they came up with. So your mom just had a great sense of color and combining things for, pretty significant impact.
And we were remarking that, there was such a huge production of primary colored dinnerware in the 1930s. And I think, the market had pretty much been saturated with those bright colors. So I think this was really refreshing to see in 1945, these really beautifully updated colors, and they weren't those muted colors from the early 40s. So I think it's really exciting. So these are just, oh, go ahead, Jim.
I was to say, I think now we're starting to look at some of the different color combinations. So yeah, this is sunburst with cloud gray and sun yellow. This is a really deep kind of eggplanty color called raisin, the interior of rose. And then also this photo, while we have that photo, here you get a better look at the alternate like coffee pot that has a spout built into it. And then there's two sizes of cups. So kind of a coffee cup and a tea cup. So there's one that's a little bit smaller. They both use the same saucer though. They fit on that.
Now that I'm seeing this photo, Jim, I think there's 4 versions of the coffee pot. Because there's the version with a different spout, and then doesn't it have the handle this way and the handle on the side?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and then
yeah, there's a handle on the side, and then there's that taller one. Yeah. Well, the green and pink, which looks really great. I mean, they're all just great combinations. This one is this wonderful chartreuse color with a blue inside.
And this isn't meant to be comprehensive. There were many other color combinations.
Yeah,
Jim,
I think there are.
Jim will find those eventually.
Yeah, I think there's color combinations yet to be found and discovered. This is a beautiful combination again. It's got a lime interior with a cedar color on the outside.
And I think this was a super innovative shape, this tumbler. I mean, I can't think of any other dinnerware line that has a tumbler like that.
Yeah.
And then what really makes Vadna of California dinnerware unique is the wooden handles and bases. And Lynn, you mentioned your father was a woodworker, so it's just interesting to combine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's a variety of handles. There is a cream soup bowl that has 2 handles on it. You can see the shaker at the bottom, and then how those cup handles are like little ear shapes with an indentation in them. And
Those soup bowls, I kind of, vaguely remembering in my mind, I remember those handles being very comfortable, very comfortable to use and very comfortable to hold.
And there's a big saucer that goes with this. So the saucer is bigger than the saucer for the coffee cup. And then the serving bowl, this is like a 9-inch serving bowl. And I have it with and without the wood base. So maybe that dropped off, later. They took those out of the line. And then that's the base on the tumbler on the right.
And it just came to mind, Jim, that the Raymore Capri had the wooden accents, but that was more of a accessory line, not a dinnerware line. But so that came later, but this was super innovative for its time.
And then some of the pieces have alternate versions. I'm assuming the wood came first, and then that was sort of maybe taken out of the line. So the shakers, there's a wood-based version, then ceramic, and the tumblers also have a ceramic base which I assume is later than the original wood.
And so on the West Coast, Vadna of California was represented by Wally Blodgett, and he was a character. First of all, that's a picture of him later in life in front of his house. But he had uh, a traveling bus that he would take to his customers. So Parmalee Dorman was one of the housewares companies in California, but he represented all the big name dinnerware manufacturers and designers on the West Coast. And he also represented Eva Zeisel's Monmouth dinnerware line. So during my research on that line, Wally's name came up quite often. But Lynn, do you have anything to add about Wally?
Well, Wally's an interesting guy. When I was, say maybe in elementary school, Wally moved down here, decided to become a potter, and he moved down to Leucadia. He'd been kind of learning from all the other potters that he knew, including us. But he decided to be a potter, so I moved to Leucadia. He became a potter. I remember he had his studio at his house in Leucadia. He made some really pretty things, and then he transitioned into being a glass blower, and he did that for more years. He's really well known around here as a glass blower, and his son then also became a glass blower, Buzz Blodgett, and I think that Buzz still has his studio and is still doing glass blowing. And then Wally surfed a lot too.
Yeah, and I
Into
think Wally morphed into the arts because the dinnerware industry was kind of drying up by the mid 50s, and I think he wisely made the transition out of it, much like your parents did. So
yeah.
he was also a surfer. He showed his son has a surfing blog, and he often posts stories about his father. So his father was quite a character. Unfortunately, all of Wally's records were burned in a fire in the late 60s. So there's no record of his work as a dinnerware sales representative.
Scott, why was the dinnerware business drying up at that time?
The Japanese imports, the
Oh
U.S.
yeah.
imports into the United States without tariffs.
Yeah.
So, and then Vadna of California dinnerware was really well represented nationwide and even in Canada. So these are some advertisements that Jim found and Lynn had, and it's a little fuzzy, but you can see prices on some of these things. A 20-piece starter set at Parmalee Dorman was $38, which seems rather expensive. And a 5-piece place setting was $7.70 in New York. And it appeared in Ladies' Home Journal in a article on dining. This is Lynn had the original paperwork for getting that dinnerware into the magazine. And Jim, you had some comments about this.
Yeah. So in the upper right, you can see that coffee pot that has that neck, but also the creamer and the sugar are there that have the alternate design that's not like the wood version. And then also at the middle of the gutter is that other salt and pepper set. So I have not come across those yet, and neither that design of the cream and sugar. That creamer is like a mini version of the teapot, of the coffee pot there. It has its own little spout.
And you have not found that piece, right?
I have not found that. I have not found those yet. And I love this tablecloth. I should say that too.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
It also was included in the California State Fair in 1950, and there was also some correspondence about that. So it was I'm not sure. You think your parents were responsible for getting this dinnerware into these things, or was it Wally who did this one?
I would guess Wally, especially at that time. I'm not aware of them doing very much marketing on their own. So, and I think the article, I think the state fair was in Sacramento. This particular one, that seems more like Wally to me.
And I just noticed, do you notice the big bowl on top of the refrigerator?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We'll see that bowl later, but there was a
It
large,
looks like it has a base on it though.
It
The
might
one on
have the
top.
wood base. It might be
yeah,
the wood base.
there's a large 18-inch bowl that probably not many were made because the porcelain was so thin. That was probably a difficult piece to produce, but there it is in that photo.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, I just noticed that now. So, and then Lynn, talk about just, your parents attending to business and just your memories about.
Yeah, so after they moved to Leucadia, they had, and you'll see it later on, they had a property where there was a manufacturing in the back, and then a retail store in the front part of the property, and the retail store was on the 101. And it, it was a little too big in space. They were pretty much making mugs at that time. Maybe early on dinnerware too, but they transitioned more to mugs. So they had more space in the retail store than they could really fill up with their stuff. So they would buy buy things from other potters, um, um, to sell at the retail store. So every year in the summer, we would go to the gift show in Los Angeles, which was pretty fun. It was held at the Brack Shops, which is in downtown LA, which is what the photos of. Also at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA and the Ambassador Hotel. And, all the rooms were individual showrooms that the sellers would rent and have all their merchandise, and you would order what you wanted from them. So that was fun.
Jim, is that still there, the Brack Shops? Or is that long gone?
I don't know. The Biltmore Hotel is still there and been remodeled.
I didn't look that up, but I don't know if that's still there.
I'll have to
The
drive down
Ambassador
tonight.
Hotel is gone, I think.
I'll have to see.
And then Lynn, talk about your memories of going to the.
Yes. So, obviously their ceramics are made with molds. So there was a guy named Pete Porter that Jim found the address of. So we would order the molds from him and periodically go up to pick up the molds, which I also remember as being fun because we would eat at the Tam O'Shanter, which is a very cool restaurant, which Scott says is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And then across the street, I remember a big pottery, and Scott and Jim said that was Franciscan, which you see the photo of. So the bottom is the Tam O'Shanter restaurant, and the top is the Franciscan pottery across the street next to Pete Porter's molds.
Gladding McBean's still there, right, Jim? I know they do different things. They're not there anymore?
No, that whole site was torn down. There's a Best Buy there and other shopping opportunities. It was there for a long time, and I think they had to mitigate the soil before they could put something on there. But yeah, Gladding McBean and the Franciscan showroom were on one side of the street, Tam O'Shanter on the other side, and Peter Porter, the mold guy. It's all kind of in the same couple of blocks.
So now we're going to go into what I think is really exciting dinnerware is the pattern dinnerware that Vadna produced. And this is a promotional shot. Was this in their showroom, do you think? Where was this?
I don't know where that is from. It's not from it's not from our store. That looks like something that was maybe set up for that purpose. Maybe it was in, one of the stores where it was sold.
I should say any photo you're seeing that's black and white, these are older promotional photos that Lynn has. So here's the 3 pattern dinnerware lines that were produced: Fruit Festival, Bird in a Gilded Cage, Evening, and there's a exclusive pattern called Night and Day, which is similar to Evening. And here's some, we'll go into Fruit Festival. And Lynn and Jim, you guys can talk about all this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
so,
did you
well,
say you wanted me
go
to
ahead.
say something?
Go ahead.
yeah,
Jim might have more interesting things to say about this, but
Well,
I
talk
would,
about Lynn, how it was produced, and you
yeah,
mentioned how many people helped and that type of thing.
yeah. So my mom and another full-time person did the painting. The background paint, my dad sprayed the background glaze on, and then uh, my mom and this other woman named Zeta did the painting of the designs. I don't actually know how the the black rim got on the. A lot of stuff has gold rims or platinum rims, and I remember that was just put on that they would just use their finger, and dip it in the liquid gold and put it on. Not sure how that black color around the rim got on. I guess maybe my dad sprayed that after spraying the background glaze.
Oh, yeah, sprayed.
yeah.
Sprayed on.
It seems, it does seem sprayed on. Yeah. Yeah. So these, yeah. So when I was taking the photos for the presentation, I set this up because, and I've said to everyone so far, it's like, this is just astounding. I mean, the amount of handwork in painting these plates, the amount of colors, the spraying the black, the applying of the gold. I mean, all the colors and so detailed, especially on the larger plates. I mean, it's just amazing.
And we were talking about, we always hear how much work went into like a Red Wing patterned dinnerware set, but this is just as complicated, if not more, because you've got the gold overlay and the sprayed edge, um, and it's all hand done, which is just incredibly amazing.
Yeah.
I only a few people.
And I told these guys they always worked, as long as I remember, all day, 7 days a week. It was pretty intensive.
Yeah, and we were talking about how, if a large, I mean, they had nationwide distribution, so I'm sure large orders came in, and I don't know if they still did it all by themselves. They almost had to have been, because you had to have been trained to do this. So it must have been pretty hectic when a large order came in. But here's a
The
nice.
woman,
Oh, go
the
ahead.
woman that did decorating in Leucadia, as I said, she had a background as an artist, and Zeta in Los Angeles, I don't know if she did, but that would certainly help.
Just the detailing is just absolutely beautiful. And all these colored photos are from Jim, your collection. So
Yeah. I mean, you can see what it would look like on like a whole table setting with all the different pieces. It's just really beautiful. And yeah, oh, you can see all the black edges, even on the tumblers, they're sprayed, and on the cups on the outside. So
and
yeah,
I
you're
think you said none of the pattern pieces have the wood accent, right? It's all ceramic.
correct. Yeah. So these tumblers have the ceramic base and not the wood.
And that's how it's marked. And there's a cigarette box. And then we go into Bird in a Gilded Cage, in the Gilded Cage, which is, here's another promotional photo.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, this is, again, it's so detailed and so much work. The smaller pieces just have like a little sprig or smaller amounts of design to paint, but the bigger plates, I mean, that's really, really complicated and beautiful.
I wouldn't even know where to begin on how to paint this. You know what I mean? And then make just set after set. It's just incredible. Did you ever help in this part, Lynn? Were you ever a decorator? I know you were kind of young.
Yeah, no, I worked at the shop in Leucadia. I worked at the retail store. I started waiting on customers when I was in fourth grade. I think I was at the pottery a lot. Usually when I was there, I was just kind of like making my own stuff with the clay. There really wasn't much that I could do. I mean, my dad did the spraying. You know, I couldn't really help with the decorating or even like the finishing of the stuff before it was trimmed. I mean, sorry, before it was fired. As probably would have been beyond my abilities.
There's- unfortunately, Jim does not own this set, but this is a photo we found of a beautiful set of burning a gilded cage. That's stunning. And then the next pattern, probably easier to produce, I would guess maybe a little less expensive, is Evening. And these are some promotional photos of that one. And you can see all the interesting pieces that they offered.
Yeah, this is a great photo because it shows some more kind of gift items, like the candelabra and the vase, and you know, cigarette box and the ashtray. And that coffee pot up in the upper right. I mean, these are all things I haven't seen, but I love seeing this kind of evidence, this documentation of it.
We know one's out there, right? There was one for the photo.
Yep. Yeah, so these these are mostly kind of black charcoal color, but there is a platinum detail on the leaves. So yeah, like here you can see the platinum on the leaf and on all the berries.
And this had that sprayed edge. Beautiful. And so I found this ad from Bullock's. Jim has an example of a plate that's marked an exclusive for Bullock's. And I found this advertisement that suggested that there was a variation on Evening called Night and Day. And so this is the ad I found from 1952. And Jim has the plate on the right. Jim, you can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, these all came together. There's 5, these are salad plates, there's 5 of them, and then miscellaneous amount of other things. And one plate was marked, you know, exclusive for Bullock's Pasadena. And I sort of just thought it was all the same. But then Scott found that ad that said there's like evidently this variation called Night and Day, and they do describe it as more black and white. So this is a photo of, on the right is the one that's marked for Bullock's, which we're now assuming is Night and Day. And the one on the left is sort of a more charcoal gray color in general. So there is some difference between the two.
In fact, the one on the right has a more pronounced black
Yeah,
rim to it too.
Sure.
yeah.
Although we discussed, it seems like there wasn't a lot of difference to have an exclusive, but
Yeah.
But it is punchier, you know, because there's contrast with the black.
And then these are a wonderful accessory, Jim and Glenn.
This is your favorite thing, Scott, right?
It is my favorite thing.
The hangover tray. So yeah, so this is like a little snack tray with a place for you to put your wine glass or whatever you're drinking. And some of the plates are stamped with this graphic that's in the little inset that shows how to use it. Some of them are just, you know, stamped with a regular stamp. But they come in different colors, and, you know, Lynn asked me if I had ever tried it, and I said no. But,
I haven't tried it either. I have some also. The idea was that you could hold everything in one hand with them. You could hold your drink and your snacks in one hand and not have to have 2 hands full. but I think none of us have actually tried that to see if
Yeah.
it works.
I'm dying to try it. So
Yeah.
Jim's going to have a cocktail party.
You have to let us know.
Yeah.
Then through just our discussion, Jim had this one plate, and then Lynn had a couple of examples of this, and her sister has an example. And I found some ads that there was a pattern called Primavera. And we're pretty sure, although we don't have concrete evidence, we're pretty sure this is the Primavera pattern that was offered early on. And Lynn, you said your sister has had a complete set.
Yeah, my sister, she's a half sister. She was almost 20 years older than I, and she's deceased now. But I do remember at her house, like at Thanksgiving, she had like a whole set of the Primavera, and it was really pretty. It's very pretty in a whole set. It's very happy.
And it makes sense because Primavera means spring in Italian and Spanish, and this looks very springtime. Yeah. And then these are some other things. We had just talked about that bowl in the California State Fair photo, and Lynn,
Yeah.
this is Lynn's bowl. She has it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by it because it's so big. I just, the mold must have been really big, and it must have been very hard to handle, when it was being produced, just because of being so thin and so big. It must have been fragile. And that color combination was called teak wood and gold.
And then we found a photo of some black and white plates. So out there would be like, another version to see. That's why there's probably other color combinations we haven't really found yet. And then down below, that's a plate that seems to be some kind of a test or sample. That design was probably masked out, and then the plate sprayed black. Just a one-off that came along.
And unfortunately, there's no catalogs or brochures to kind of give us a comprehensive picture of what colorways were available or whatever. So a lot of this has just been put together with Lynn's memory and what Jim has found and what advertisements we found through our research. There's some other interesting pieces. Lynn, do you want to talk about these?
Lynn, that's your cover jar on the left?
Yeah. And then you had noted that it's a coffee pot lid, right, on a vase?
Yeah, there's a vase in that photo, and then there's the lid for the coffee pot that's like that. So that might be a matchup of those two. And then in the middle, it's sort of the same pieces, somewhat adapted into a lamp base with some other kind of a design on it.
And then there's the drip glaze tumblers, which we'll see more of this drip glaze technique when we go into some of the next slides. Oops.
And these are just some other odd things that have come along. There was this small set of masks. They're only 2.5 inches tall in one of Jack Chipman's books, and they are marked Vadna. And then this other creamer and open sugar that are also Vadna that we don't know how big of a set that might have been that had that kind of design approach.
So this happened in 1955, right, Lynn, that they moved to Leucadia?
I think so. I was 5 or 6. I'm thinking 6. So that's kind of approximate, but yeah.
So these are some photos taken in 1955. And did they build this building, Lynn, or was
I
this?
think they did. In the back part, which you'll see later, where they did the manufacturing, that was a house. So it was an old, really rundown house that they bought and made into the pottery, and then they added on another building later on onto the manufacturing part. I don't remember real clearly, but I'm sure they did build it. Like I said, it didn't have heat. I remember it getting really cold. They did have like a, you know, a big, whatever you call a stove, fireplace stove thing inside. Um, but it was not very well insulated and there wasn't any heat in that. I'm pretty sure they did build that just as the retail store.
Mm.
Leucadia was a beach community, right? So there was a lot of tourists that were coming through there, and that's why they.
Well, yeah, because so that's the 101 that you see, and the I-5 didn't exist at that time. So anybody going, say, from LA to San Diego would go down the 101. So at that time, and I think the 5 in that area probably opened around, I don't know, like 67 or 68. So before that, it was the 101. So at that time, there was a lot of traffic on the 101. And yeah, so the ocean is like, I don't know, 3 blocks up the road there.
I,
So
def-
it was,
I definitely would have stopped if I saw that.
Mhm.
Right? Here's a nice close up. Lynn, talk about some of the things that you see in the window.
yeah, so you can see the candelabra up there. I can't tell what pattern that is. Maybe it's bird in a gilded cage. The other stuff that I see is all stuff that we made. You know, later on, as I say, they did buy some things from other people. I remember they did later on. They did buy some dinnerware sets from other people after we weren't making dinnerware anymore. But those are sort of a combination of the mugs that we made, and but then also like the candelabra and that big tumbler in the top window. Those were things that got
And
phased out.
they were still kind of making the dinnerware at this point. That hadn't been quite phased out yet.
Yeah, when they moved to Leucadia, they were still making dinnerware for a while, but then transitioned into just making the mugs.
Mhm.
So here's another photo of what the building looks like today, and it's you think it's still the same building, Lynn, right? It's just been upgraded or updated,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's a great shot of the view from across the 101. You can see all these cool eucalyptus trees, and it's a great shot.
And you can also see the manufacturing part in the back behind the retail store. And
And
that's, I don't, do you want me to
this
talk
is the
about that,
building.
Scott? So that's the manufacturing part. So it's on the same property. It was in the back of the property, the retail store in the front, and there was space in between, which is kind of where where people would park. Um, so those are some. The top photo is the manufacturing building. Those are a couple, I think, like friends of the family. The picture below is also at the pottery. My mom is second from the left. I'm on the right, and my dad's mother is next to me. And those other 2 women are, I think, friends of my grandmother's. Then the middle, there's a picture of my mom and her brother Gene, who lived in Los Angeles area.
During the time they moved to Leucadia, they eventually transitioned from dinnerware production to easier to make mugs and selling other products. And I think, Lynn, you had said this, the dinnerware was so labor intensive.
Mhm.
The mugs were much more suitable to the tourist trade that was driving by. Is that a pretty fair reason why they maybe transitioned out of dinnerware?
Yeah, but also, as you mentioned, the Japanese import, I do remember my dad talking about that when I was a child and not being very happy about that. And that maybe that's another reason that they transitioned into the mugs.
And Jim, talk about this plate you have.
Yeah, so this is just on the back of a fruit festival plate. just happened to be there, and it looks like someone's, practicing the painting of one of the designs. Yeah, those berries are on there, strawberries kind of to the right, and yeah, it's just on the back of a plate, and it was great to discover that as I was going through this stack of plates. I was going to say that at this moment too is when they changed from Vadna of California to Vadna Ware. This plate has the Vadna Ware logo on it.
So this is when they were transitioning.
So it's a.
I love this plate because it shows how labor intensive those patterns were. So then we go into the next phase. The Vadna Ware changed from really making dinnerware to almost exclusively mugs. Is that mugs and maybe just a few other pieces?
Yeah, yeah.
This is a great, these are all part of Jim's collection, but the great overview of the mug products that were being made.
Yeah, this shows 7 different shapes, different handle designs, different body designs. So it kind of gives you a good sense of the variety.
And I think it was smart too, because mugs were becoming really popular around that time. And I think it was just a great business strategy to switch over to this type of product.
Do you want to talk about the Irish coffee one, Scott?
We'll get there. Yeah. So this is, Lynn, you want to describe this photo?
That's my dad's mother, Josephine. She lived in La Jolla, and she came in to kind of help every day. She actually didn't do a lot, but she kind of swept and dusted, and sometimes she would help a customer, but that kind of wasn't her thing. And then the board on the left was just kind of a sampling of mugs that were for sale. And that, of course, the front to the store.
I love that photo. Great photo.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense because they had a storefront, which they didn't have in Los Angeles. And people are just driving by and they just stop, and maybe they're not going to buy a whole set of dinnerware, but they can pick up some mugs, a souvenir of their trip. It does seem like a smart marketing move.
Jim, a lot of people came kind of like maybe you would drive into the country on a Saturday, or you would drive up into the mountains and you would have lunch somewhere that you liked, and you'd stop at little stores. A lot of people, after they knew about it, was kind of like that. Like maybe they'd come down from Orange County or from LA, they'd take a drive down the 101 and they'd have lunch, and they'd stop at Vadna's and get a couple new mugs and say hello to us, that kind of thing.
I love this photo too, because this is totally California, mid-century modern, kind of just, you said there was no heat, Lynn, but just.
Yeah. I remember that really well.
You wouldn't find this in Illinois, so I love this photo. And then these are just some of the different mugs and glaze treatments. Lots of drip glazed product start coming in.
Those were intended to be used on some kind of unstable surface, like a boat or something, or also if you wanted your coffee to stay hotter because the top part was smaller than the bottom part.
And I love how this is like a more contemporary version of the original Vadna of California dinnerware, that two-toned glaze treatment.
Yeah.
So there were a few other pieces. There's a creamer and sugar that went with this mug set. And Lynn, you said these were sold in wire holders, right? You could buy a whole
Yeah, they were all sold individually, but you could buy one of these. I remember them as black wire, coated wire holders with a handle, and so you could, I think it had like space for 6, or maybe there was one with space for 8, so you could, pick out your cups and put them in the holder. Some people did that as gifts. I remember that's what I always gave to my teachers in elementary school.
The colors are just fantastic. It's a happy design. Another mug variation. More mugs. Irish coffee mugs. Lynn, you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I just mentioned that because Scott liked those. They didn't make those. I don't remember making them for real long, but the idea was that they were for Irish coffee.
I love how that glaze just drips down those.
Mm.
This is beautiful. And then lots of custom and souvenir mugs. So,
And that was later on. That was not at the beginning. I think as they got more well known, sometimes businesses would come and say, can you make whatever 50 or 100 whatever for all our employees, and
Yeah.
then that's the time that they went. As I say, this was later in the business. That's when they went to using decals for the first time.
and they had that little vase, which is interesting too.
Yeah, and that was not familiar to me. I noticed that.
Yeah. Got that little horseshoe on it. I forgot. I think I looked up what that was for. Now I don't remember. But I do love the
But,
one in the front with the square dancing couple. So great.
but
Again,
at the very, very end of their business, when they would get orders like that for dancing, they sometimes did buy mugs to do the
uh,
decorating. And I believe that square dancing one, um, I believe they did not make that. All the other ones they did make, but I think that one was purchased, and that might also be the case with the vase.
okay, that makes
Uh,
sense. And then lots of different marks. And again, these are all from Jim's collection. But you'll find Vadna of California, you'll find Vadna ware, and then these are all the different variations.
and I would just point out the Vadnaware logo, like in the lower left, with the circle. We talked about that being the initials VH for Vadna Humfreville, that design.
That's great. Do you know who designed those? Was it your mom who did these, the logos, Lynn, or?
I don't know. My guess it was both of them.
Yeah, it's a nice logo, nice logos. And then the other duality is, after the move to Leucadia, I think Vadna became a really important part of the community. And you want to talk about that a little bit, Lynn?
That's an article that was in the local newspaper that was called the Encinitas Coast Dispatch. You know how small businesses sponsor little league teams, so this was kind of a human interest publicity article where the team that they sponsored came to the pottery. So on the left, that's a couple little leaguers with my dad, and that's, you can kind of see pottery stuff in shelves in the background, and that's um, that's the device my dad used to spray things. It had like four, I think, of those flat plates, and it would turn, and he would spray them. And then the one on the right, the woman on the left is named Agnes Andrade. She's the one that she worked full time for us, and she did the finishing. So when after a piece came out of the mold and it had dried, it'd have to be kind of trimmed and sanded a little before it was fired, and that's what she did.
And then
Oh, and then on
there's,
the right,
yeah,
at one point they were contracted to do these steins for the Encinitas Christmas parade that were given out to, I'm not sure, maybe to all the organizations that participated in the parade. And actually people around here still kind of collect those. You can see there was the year was on it. So, you could collect all the years. And the Santa Claus obviously is the decal too. And then we did the gold painting.
and then Lynn, talk about just,
Yeah, on the left, that was an order for the city of San Diego for the 200th anniversary. I remember they ordered quite a few of those. So obviously a decal, and then again we did the gold rim and base. And then on the right, that's kind of them later in the life. That's me on the right, sitting in front of the fireplace. And that's my daughter sitting on my mom, Vadna's lap, and my dad in the chair.
And talk about why they closed the company.
Oh, yeah. So when, in 60, let me think, like 69, I think, 68 or 69, my dad had a major heart attack. I think they were also getting maybe a little tired at that time. So he had a major heart attack, and they closed it fairly quickly. Within a year, retired and sold the property.
And you had told us that this order for these 200th anniversary mugs was one of the last orders that they were at that time. Yeah.
And that's it. That's the story.
Thank you, everybody. I want to say this has just been really amazing to me to find that people are interested in Vadna of California and all of this stuff, and it's just been really interesting and rewarding for me, and also it's kind of given me really a new appreciation for my parents' ceramics.
Well, it's beautiful. They did some beautiful designs and they left a wonderful legacy. So there's
Yeah.
collectors of it out there.
And I just really appreciate being able to get this kind of story. I mean, it's in such depth and you have so much great information. So it really adds to, loving a collection of stuff.
Yeah, it's been really fun for Jim and I to get to know you and dig into all this information. So it's
Thank you. And like we talked about, it is kind of mysterious how two people were not working as artists or craftsmen or anything were able to learn all this stuff and develop the colors and the glazes. So I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to the three of you. Just remarkable. Now nobody can say that there's no information about Vadna out there.
Yeah.
So we're so happy to have had you, but I hope you can stick around, even though we're kind of running a little late, but you can stick around because I have some questions, but there's some questions in the chat that have to do with lots of different things. So I think Bill, do you have the questions? And
yeah, I have some questions here. So how were the wooden handles attached? And did the handles come off? How did you wash them with the wooden?
They did not come off. I unfortunately I don't know a lot about that because I was pretty young when they were doing that. Jim might know. To my knowledge, they were just glued on. That's really all I know, unless maybe Jim knows more since he has those.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that there's a glue because it's yellowed over time. So around that seam, you can see that a glue is present. I think someone asked if the wood pieces came off. I don't think intentionally. I don't think everything is glued.
No, they were not removable.
And you can see that the
wood. What is the wood? What kind of wood is it?
We don't know.
I'm not sure.
That's a good question.
Because I saw that the one piece was called, the bowl you had was called teak wood or something. So I just wondered.
It was a glaze color. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered if that had any, that came to mind because they were using teak wood or something.
You can also see that the wood, the varnish finish on it has, worn off, I think, from washing and use. But yeah, it probably didn't hold up super long with washing.
Have you ever found a piece, Jim, where the wood is missing? It
No.
looks like it always stays on pretty well. So
yeah, I wonder, how how is it like? Is there some kind of notch in there that you get it just right when you attach it, or like what is it covering? I thought about soaking a piece for a while to see if I could get it off, but
it's damaged. Yeah, good idea.
So the actual dates of the pottery are from like 1945 till 1969.
The actual origin, when they like actually started in business as a business, I'm not sure. I would say around 1945. I don't know if Scott or Jim know when they, formally
Ads
started.
started showing up for the dinnerware in 46.
Yeah.
So, and then I would say ads stop around 1955, 56. I didn't find anything beyond 56 for the dinnerware.
Well, and the inscription in the book is Christmas of 45,
Right,
and it's describing it as a new venture.
right.
So maybe it went into production, after that in 46 rather than 45.
That's what I would think. Yeah. But they did a
Yeah, I
lot.
think
They did a lot of work from 1945 to 46. I mean, it makes us tired just thinking about it.
No. Well, and like you just said, they didn't necessarily have an artistic background. You said your mom had a good sense of color, but like those patterns are amazing and very accomplished. So it's incredible all the way around.
I
So,
think it did take them some time to develop those patterns too. I mean, they tried different patterns, like in drawings and, then tried them out. So I think it did take them a little time to settle on those patterns.
I don't think the patterns came right away. Those were a little later.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the diameter of the hangover plates? How big are they? The hangover plates with
Yeah.
They're not real huge. Do you know? I can go and get one and measure them, but what do you think?
Kind of like salad plate size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only like 7 or 8 inches.
Jim's got the whole production run, so he'd be the guy that knows.
So
I can run and grab one and measure it if you want, but
no, I'll get back to you about that. Just curious. So now I just lost my question. Oh, so does anybody have like a broken plate, or do you have the clay body formula? Because you said it was like I can't remember, semi porcelain or something. But did anybody ever break a Vadna piece, intentionally or not? Or did your family record like the clay body formula?
that's actually really, really interesting. My dad had this huge, barrel thing where he would put all of the different, whatever minerals and chemicals in, and it had, an agitator, and he would mix the slip in that. I mean, it was like really huge, and he would have, these big bags of, sorry, I don't know what, but big bags of the stuff that went into making the slip delivered. Possibly one reason he had a heart attack because, well, he smoked, he was overweight, and he would lift these huge, these huge bags of the materials into this big barrel. But I don't know what they were. I could look inside those ceramic books and see if there's any papers that he left with notes about the formula.
Yeah, I was curious about it even when we inherited some of the Bill Stern pieces, because it's so lightweight, yet, I tend to think of it's dinnerware and it's not like translucent, then it's going to be, and I haven't tried the ringing test, but that maybe it's some kind of earthenware, because it's so lightweight. It's not a stoneware or something. I was just curious if you had a recipe or something for the clay.
I'll look. I'll look and see. Like you say, all I can think is maybe there's something tucked into those books. But I'll look and see. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I'd be interested. And I saw that Mike Pratt had a note in the chat here. I'm interrupting Bill, who's probably looking at this, but Mike Pratt said, I'm trying to find it now, that he had the salt and pepper that Jim Drobka said that he hadn't seen.
Oh.
Mike Pratt, are you still there?
Oh,
Ship those right over, Mike.
There,
no.
there we go.
We
If
want
I
to
could reach through the Zoom, I'd grab those
Mike,
from you.
are they marked? They're marked on the bottom, right?
Can you turn your
These
on,
are not
Mike?
marked.
Oh, they're
Oh,
not marked. No,
Not marked.
maybe that's why they're escaping your attention, Jim.
Yeah.
I want to see him sideways
Oh,
again.
Look
yeah.
at that. Look
Can you
at that.
wave him at us again?
Nice.
Mike?
Did you just unpack that set today?
No. Yeah, smart. You're a smart Alec. No, yeah. And
Yeah.
then So those are the mugs. Those are Leucadia ware. I mean, Vadna ware from Leucadia, California.
Yeah.
I don't think they made mugs before the move, right, Lynn?
You know, I didn't think so, but in some of the pictures, I think that maybe those publicity pictures, I did see a dinnerware set that had that rounded mug shape.
Yeah, there was a mug with the in the dinnerware line, but I like all those different.
Oh yeah, no, not separate. They didn't sell the mugs separate, but I actually didn't even realize they made that same rounded shape with the dinnerware. But yeah, they didn't sell the mug separately until Leucadia.
So Bill, do you have other questions in the chat that you want to raise now?
Yeah, one other question is how many people worked at Vadna? You mentioned a couple of people who helped out, like with decoration and trimming the stuff after it came out of the mold.
That's it. That's it. In Leucadia, it was my mom and my dad, like I say, all day, 7 days a week. At different times, like I say, I worked in the retail store a lot, starting in the 4th grade. There's a woman that did the trimming and another woman that did the named Sally that that did the decorating, and she had been an artist in her past. So my mom and my dad, those two women, me in the store, my grandma doing a little bit in the store. There was a time my other grandma and my sister helped a little, but they didn't like it, so or they were busy doing other things, so they weren't there very much.
And besides Bullock's, were there other retails that sold the dinnerware? And did they sell seconds?
I mean, they had nationwide distribution. There were all sorts of ads throughout the United States for the dinnerware. So I assume it was sold. Jim, what do you think? I mean, right? Most major department stores probably had it.
Yeah, I mean, the ads are for different department stores. So, and yeah, it was all across the country.
And did you ask if they sold seconds?
Yes, did they sell seconds?
I'm not aware of them doing that in any formalized way. I mean, I never saw that, but I can't say it didn't happen.
Was there a big shard pile somewhere? The rejects, if I go out with my shovel, am I going to Leucadia, am I going to can I dig a hole and find some shards or the molds or
the way I remember it, not of the finished products. I mean, obviously before they were fired, there was damages, and then sometimes after they were fired, I don't remember, once they got through that whole process and it was finished, I don't really remember a lot of seconds, but I don't know why that would be. That might even be like some of the stuff we have here at home. Like my sister had some mugs too. Maybe those were seconds, but yeah, I don't remember that, other than there was a certain amount of breakage earlier in the process.
I was going to add that, that early ad we showed from Women's Wear Daily, that Duality in dinnerware, it mentioned that the Burkharts were the East Coast distributors, sales representatives for Vadna. So Vadna was really available right throughout the United States. They had great distribution.
Yeah, and sometimes they'd be sold alongside other California dinnerware. The ads would have other California makers in the ad as well.
Well, any other questions?
I don't have any more questions in the chat that I'm seeing.
I think it's probably a good time to wrap up this wonderful presentation. so grateful to you three and for all the audience being here and sticking with us because it was worth it. You'd have to all agree it was worth it. So thank you very much. Now I can sleep better tonight because I know more about Vadna of California.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.